your pocket.
Testing, yeah. Yeah. You know how it goes. Sometimes you got to look out for your dad.
Well, your dad did a good job this morning.
Well, thank you. I'll tell him. He was wondering how he did. And I went, you did all right. You know, you did fine, Dad. I mean, you know.
A little more practice.
Yeah, you know, you need to work on a couple of things. Here, let me tell you the 20 things where you went wrong. And I've been waiting for that day all my life. No, he did a great job. You know how it is. I've listened to preachers go 1A or 1-2-C. You think you mean 3? Yeah, that one too. Yeah. Yeah. So, we're here in 1 Samuel chapter 30. Great news is there's only one more chapter left, 31. Okay? Last week, I need to get that 24 thing that does the countdown. Yeah, 24 delight, 24? 24? You could learn so much from Jack Bauer, how to start a car and a dead man's heart with a car battery and jumper cables.
Well, I have a real need for that.
You never know when that's, I mean, really, there's no wrong way to do it, but sometimes it can be helpful. That's right. Anyhow, I kind of need that running in the background. Previously, in 1 Samuel, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. Anyhow, you had David go out with Achish, the king of Gath, to the battle lines to fight against whom? Saul. And when he gets there, the other 4 lords of the Philistines say what? Yeah, this might have been a great plan in your mind, brother, but now that we're seeing it working out, 600 men in our backyard protecting us is not how we want to go out, because these 600 men were going to kill us. So Achish does what? He sends David away, and David says, you know, hey, why am I being sent off? Well, one of the great things about this, and we talked about how these things are being providentially worked, even though a lot of times we may not understand they're providentially being worked out. David begins to return to Ziklag, and it's good that he does, because something happens here that is going to make that a point. Now, when David and his men came to Ziklag on the 3rd day, so they've been gone how many days? 3 days. The Amalekites had made a raid against the Negeb and against Ziklag. And they had overcome Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive all, the women and all who were in it, both small and great. They killed no one, but carried them off and went on their way. So the enemy in which David has been pursuing, and a few others, the Amalekites are always a Canaanite group that kind of has always been troubling the children of Israel. They fought against them many times. This time they've come and they've burned the city and taken off all of David and his 600 men's wives. But are any of them harmed? Not a single one of them harmed. This is the key point here. None of them have been harmed, and off they go. When David and his men came to the city and found it burned with a fire and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive, David and the people that were with them raised their raised their voices and wept until they had no more strength to weep. David's 2 wives had been taken captive. I got a headache. Don't get me trying to say those names. I'll get tongue-tied. And David was greatly distressed, for the people, now check this out, the people spoke of stoning him, because all the people were bitter in soul, each for his sons and daughter. Now let me ask you this question. Are the daughters and sons alive?
Yes. But they know it at this point in time.
I think that the bodies aren't there, but I believe that they do.
Because the body would still be there if they were dead.
That would be one of the indicators is if you found bodies. Two, I think that it's one of the things that the people in the region would say, well, they came and they burned the city, but they took everybody. They took everybody away. Now, this intensity of weeping, does it fit the criteria for my wife and kids have been taken captive and they're still alive, or my wife and family have died in the rubble and been burned with the rubble? Or does it matter? They're using all their strength to cry over people that are still what? Alive. The family is alive. So really one of the things to look at is, what really are they really crying about losing? Pride. What else went up in the city that got burned? Their stuff. Their stuff. And so you have this. Now, don't get me wrong. They're upset that their families are gone and they don't know exactly who took them and they don't know where they've gone. They'll find that out here in a little bit. But their families have been taken and they cry aloud. But watch what they do. Notice what they do. Check this out. But the people spoke of stoning him. That'd be David. Because all the people were bitter in soul for each of his sons and daughters. Is it David's fault that they were taken captive?
They thought it was.
Well, that, or are they looking for a single point scapegoat? He commanded, but the thing is they serve at the behest of Achish, the king of Gath, who they fall in the region with, and they are paid mercenaries in his service, and he says, come to battle with me. That's really not a request. I mean, those of you with rank in the military know that when the colonel goes, hey, you know what would be great? If we had, Friday is looking like a good day. Maybe if we all got together at the park for chicken. What are you doing Friday at the park? You're having chicken, and you will all be there, whether you want to be or not to be. Because the commander went, chicken at the park on Friday.
But this is the first time that David had taken all his men. Usually he left a rear guard.
Usually he did, but he did not take any with him this time. You're absolutely correct. And that's why the town was easily overwhelmed, I would say, because there really aren't any fighting men left. He took all 600 with him. And any men that had the will to fight went with David. You might have had a few people that would fight, but anyhow. Yeah? And then, but look at this. Check this out. They wept bitterly, and they were looking to stone David. Now, is it David's fault? Well, it can be looked at as David's fault. He took the men into battle. But does David really have a choice on whether or not he's going to go into battle? No, Achish the king says, you're going into battle, and since I don't want you to feel like you have to fight against Saul, why don't you be my bodyguard, you and your 600 men, be my bodyguard. And it was kind of prestigious because Achish has a 600-man bodyguard, and the other guys probably have like 20 dudes. So, his entourage goes on for a little while. A little bit of pride involved there. David doesn't really have much of an option. He's going to go, so he and his men go. And while they're gone, the Amalekites, which is typical in this day and age, when all whole armies went into the army, your enemies of the other enemy went, hey, there's nobody in the rear. We could raid this country and rob it blind. And no one will stop us because they're engaged in a fight in the forward area. But look at the consequences of David following after Achish. The people wanted to do what? Stone him. Now these are part of his 600 men. These are the men that are faithful men of his that followed after him. And these men wanted to stone him over the death of something. Kids are still alive. Wives are still alive. Nothing has harmed the families. And let's say they didn't know if they were still alive. They certainly aren't dead in this area. They certainly aren't dead in Ziklag. They may have been hauled off and offered a sacrifice somewhere else, or they've been hauled off and since you don't know who they are, you'll never know where to chase them down at. But look at the thing. Did all 600 of them go with David? Do you think that David would have given them the same option as Achish the king? You know, David, if you want to come with me. No. Achish says, David, you come. David looks at these 600 men and says, we're called to battle, boys. Let's go. You go. And yet the response is, let's stone David. Why is this easy to do? Is it really David's fault? Well, he's the leader, yeah, but there's also the personal responsibility of each man for his own home, right? We are here at church tonight, and while we are here, your house gets broke into and all your stuff is gone and they burn it to the ground. Is it my fault that you're here at church? Well, you know, that's where Stephanie and the kids are at. Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? You're here at church. Is it my fault you're here? Well, yeah, you could blame God for being at church and him not protecting your home.
How's that work out for you?
I know it doesn't work very well for me. And so you have this kind of odd thing here. Notice that a lot of times when bad things happen, do we look for the person who's responsible for the actions? Because who is responsible for the taking of the families? The Amalekites, right? They're responsible. Instead, we look for someone who's in charge to take the fall. Look, at any political situation you have going on, you always have one person go, Janet Reno's, I was solely responsible for the raid in Waco. I alone bear the responsibility. And then everybody shoots her and she goes, well, not literally, but figuratively shoots her and she goes off and then goes on the lecture circuit, right? Oliver North, same thing. You have this whole, everyone wants a scapegoat. Little Caesars. Seen the commercial? Our corporate scapegoat. I acted alone. I was young. We look for scapegoats. What are they looking for here? They're looking for a scapegoat. Who is the classic scapegoat? David. Is this more than just Ziklag being taken? I think so. They end up in Ziklag because they have to run from Saul. They leave the land of their childbirth, and they then move around as a bunch of gypsies. And when they finally get a sense of normalcy, things start looking up for them. Things are going well for them. Things are going good. They have a dip, and all of a sudden it's time to play shoot the leader. I've seen this in every organization. I've seen this when I worked for grocery stores. You saw this with the Wounded Warrior Fund. You know, they were wasting money, and of course it was only the two guys at the top. Right, yeah, that's how it works. It was only those two. It was nobody else. You look at the VA. Oh, it's only everybody at the top. It's called shoot the leader. David just happens to be the leader, so guess what David gets? He gets shot. But notice what David does. They are reacting out of emotion. They are reacting out of not necessarily seeking the Lord's face, and they are reacting out of fear, anger, and frustration and pain. Notice what David does. But David strengthen himself in the Lord. They are busy wailing and weeping and exhausting themselves over praying or wailing, or not praying, but over wailing over things that they cannot control. And David goes and seeks his strength where? In God. When situations like this pop up, the temptation is for us to bemoan and wail over the loss of what we have, instead of turning to the Lord for being the strength. And we got Easter coming up here. Can you imagine if the Bible had recorded that Jesus went to the garden and go, oh, have you seen these people you've asked me to die for? They're horrible. You can't be this blind to these people. They're wretches. I got 12 of the dumbest dudes ever. No, I can't do it. No, they're so stupid. Help me out, please. It's dumb. That's not what happens, is it? No. Because we all dying. He did say, take this cup from me because I got 12 of the dumbest dudes ever. One gets out of the boat, and he takes 2 steps, and then he sinks. You just said the other one is busy selling me out for 30 pieces of silver. I thought I was at least worth 100. But, talk about a blow to the ego. I'm the son of God, and then you get 30 pieces of silver for me. Whew. That's the price of a slave. And notice a lot of times when we look at the situations that are around us, you've got two responses. You need to strengthen yourself in the Lord, or you can go and sit there and begin to look at the situation and then try to find the blame game and who to shoot. I have never had a soldier come into my office who was guilty of a crime coming for counseling to actually look at me and go, "It was me. I did it. It was a bad mistake." It always begins with what had happened was, I was at the club. This conversation is not going up from here, is it, soldier? No, okay, I just wanted to know so I could prepare myself. They never take responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault, and it's just this endless spiral into the ground. David goes and strengthens himself in the Lord. David then calls for Abinadab, the priest, the son of Elimelech, the guy that was killed by Saul and the 84 other priests at Nob, asking to bring the ephod, and David inquired of the Lord. Now remember, Saul goes out, and does Saul inquire of the Lord? Yeah. Does the Lord respond? Nope. Saul has to go and consult a medium. David goes and inquires of the Lord. Now check this out. The people are busy wasting their energy in distress, thinking of killing David, and David spends his time inquiring and strengthening himself in the Lord, and he asks for the Lord's favor, and one of the questions he asks is, shall I pursue this band, and shall I overtake them? Usually we ask these questions after we've looked for everything else to blame, right? Well, I didn't get this. It's got to be this person's fault, or I got passed over at work, and so it's got to be this person's fault. Not that I'm on Facebook 400 times a day, or not that I argued with the boss 400 times a day. It's got to be because this person had an advantage, right? David inquired of the Lord, shall I pursue this band? Shall I overtake them? And he answered them, pursue them, and check this out. You will surely overtake them, and you shall rescue. Good little battle plan of action, isn't it? Pursue them, and you'll overtake them. Well, now David needs to find out exactly who this is. So David set out with these 600 men who were with him, and they came to a brook at Besser. And where those who were left behind stayed, but David pursued, he and 400. So David gets to a brook, and 200 of his men say what? I cannot pursue them any longer. Now you got to remember, he's journeying back from a battlefield. He's been traveling probably for a good chunk of the 3 days. He gets there. They find that the city has been overwhelmed, and some of them have spent their time wailing and bemoaning the loss and have weakened themselves. And they get to a brook and they go, "Dude, we're tapped. There's no rations. We're smoked. We can't go any further." And David says, "You guys stay here. 400 of us will go on." They found an Egyptian. Already messed that one up. They found an Egyptian in the open country and brought him to David, and he gave them bread and he ate, and he gave him water to drink, and they gave him a piece of cake of fig and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit revived, and then he had not eaten or drank water for 3 days and nights. Kind of corresponds with how long that they had raided the city. And David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" Those are pretty apt questions to ask an individual. And he says, "I'm a young man from Egypt, a servant to the Amalekite, and my master left me behind because I fell sick 3 days ago." Now look at this. David doesn't really know who's got his people yet. They know that they're not dead in the city, but they don't know anything more than that. And they're trying to find these individuals, and they run by chance in open country. They run across a sick guy who's almost dead. By chance.
Right.
Or is it by the hand of providence? 3 days after the attack, they find this guy in the open desert. If you've never been to the desert, I can tell you 2 things. It's flat, and you can see for miles. Unless, of course, you're in Kuwait where it kind of does that. But where I was in Al-Qud, it was just flat. And you could see for miles.
Would there have been tracks?
You would think there would, but yeah. And so they're probably following, the text doesn't tell us, but more than likely they're following what's leaving from the city. And there's probably indicators from the weaponry or some of the cloth that's left that this looks like the Amalekites and things like that. You do have the wind that will blow things over too, and so, there's a lot of nebulous here in the story, but this young man is a vital piece of intel they do not have. I was with the Amalekites. I was a servant. I got sick. If he doesn't get sick, will David find him? If David doesn't find him, will David find out who has his wife and kids? All that happens by chance. Huh? Magic. The hand of God working. A lot of times we look at situations like this and we go, man, isn't that fortunate all this happened? Well, I guess if you want to play games of chance with your life, sure, it's fortunate that happened. Or you can look at this and go, look at how God is providentially working this out. Now again, this is David who almost got stoned to death by some of his men because the people are gone, and they by chance run across this dude in the desert, and he asks them who he is. They revive him with fig cakes and raisins, which I don't know if eating a fig cake and raisin would revive me, but okay, it worked for him. Water, fig cakes, and raisin. It sounds like a recipe for a disaster. A lot of sugar in it. A lot of sugar in it. Yeah. No, I won't chase that rabbit. Honestly, that one has a chance to take us back to Saul in the cave. I just leave that one right there, where he lost part of his robe. I'm trying hard not to go down that cave, and y'all are pulling me in. And he said, my masters left me behind because I fell sick. We made a raid against the Negeb and the Kiptharites, and against that which belonged to Judah, and against the Negeb of Caleb. Now, so far, they've been just raiding southern Judah, and the Negeb is basically the Sinai Peninsula is called the Negeb. And it says Negeb here in Hebrew. They have a letter that can be a B or a V, and typically it's translated V, but ESV translates as a B. Don't get wrapped around the axle on it. It's not that big a deal, unless you like a nerd like me, and then it is a big deal. But other than that, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But the Negeb is the Sinai Peninsula, and typically, when in Israel, when they would want to say south, they would just say the Negeb, because it was due south of everything. And so here they are raiding in the south and against the southern parts of Judah, and then he says this, and we burn Ziklag with fire. Notice that that's the only one they burn with fire. You notice that? We've raided all these other areas, but he makes a point to tell them that they did what to Ziklag? Burn it with fire. So David knows he's got his man. And David said, I'm going to kill you in a slow and painful way. No, I'm sorry, that's in the redneck version. That's in the mafia version. He'll disrespect my family. No. Will you take me down to this band? And he said, swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me in the hands of my masters, and I will take you. Very prudent request. Do you not think so? I'll tell you exactly what you want to know, but don't kill me when we're done. And save me. Now look at the situation. He was abandoned by the people that thought he was sick and going to die. What's to keep David from killing him? Has David already wiped out people in the Negeb to hide the evidence of what he was doing from Achish the king? Oh yeah, he killed a lot of people.
He's losing his way to the guys that he wants to catch.
That's right. And usually the best time to make a deal is when you hold the cards and get the best deal you can. Now, does that mean that David could just not keep the deal? Well, sure he could have. I got what I wanted. There's no one around that saw me make the deal with you. But David doesn't do that. And I will take you to this band. When they come down, behold, they were spread abroad all the land, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines, from the land of Judah. Now, the Amalekites, do they believe that they are being followed? Not if they leave a guy alive on the road to their camp, right? If you're gonna be so careless as to leave witnesses behind you, then you deserve to get caught, right? And they're eating and they're drinking and they're celebrating and they're reveling because they have all this wealth. They don't think anyone's going to pursue. Why is it possible where they don't believe anybody's going to pursue them? Where are all the able-bodied fighting men? They're out at the war. Notice how God sends David back from the war. David goes, what have I done? I should be out here with you. And God sends David back in enough time to find his family. And we'll see what he does to these folks.
Where did they get all the booze?
Probably from the raisins that they didn't make into raisins. Just my theory. I mean, they're like going, let's see, raisins, wine. Raisins, wine. Wine. They got it from the land of the Philistines. They got it from Judea. They got it from all their raids. Because here's the thing. Think about what they have to drink in this time. You have water. You have a variation of some type of milk, whether from goat, cattle, or whatever animal you choose to milk for your milk. You have some problems with some of the water that you may have some parasitic activity in it, and that's why they put the wine in there. And then you have Diet Coke.
With aspartame.
That's okay. Jesus loves me anyway. No, they have wine. That's the beverage. Those are when you go out to eat at Ahmed's falafel shop, it's do you want water, milk, or wine? There's nothing else left on the menu. And so there's a large quantity. It's not like they're like alcoholics. It's just that that's what you have to drink. Because to make that, it's the byproduct of either you make raisins or you take the grapes and make wine. No, that's not where the pastor was. No, I didn't say go drink. That is a lot. But you also have camels.
All day long. What kind of vehicles are they transporting?
Well, they probably have camels and donkeys and horses and carts and beast of burdens. And they also had captives to carry it. Captives. They had slaves, kind of like when Pharaoh built the pyramids. He had a couple million Hebrew slaves to build all those things. So it was really easy for him to build them because he'd just go out there and go, "Hey, build that." So, but
Food and drink that they had to transport for weeks at a time.
that's a lot of stuff, isn't it?
A lot of men to thousands of men.
Well,
It's not just this battle, it's every battle it just boggles.
the logistics of what is it? When I was stationed with the support battalion my first time through, I think it's for every trigger puller, it takes 9 logistics personnel to support the trigger puller. So for every guy that pulls the trigger, it's 9 dudes to supply him with the food, weapons, ammunition, clothing.
We would go and fill the car up.
Oh, please.
And then here's these guys.
I just got back from a trip. And those of you that have had babies, you understand that anytime you take a child under the age of a certain age with you, it is an exercise in logistics of, do I have enough diapers? Do I have enough cream? Do I have enough wet wipes? Do I have a bag to put the diaper in? And is there enough change of clothes in case the baby gets sick? No, that bag goes in the car. Yeah, I had a stroller that I had to have a stroller that I had strapped to the top of the car that I had to get out to where I could get it into the parking garage to get in. It actually, I had it beside me going down the ramp while I was driving the car. It was fun. Yeah, we'll let that rabbit just go on by. Just let that one go on by.
I bet they drank a lot of wine and ate a lot of dried meats.
Well, you have fish, you have fruits, you have a lot of these things. This is stuff that they picked up. They intended to go and raid for wealth. So they would have brought enough things to carry the wealth back. That's the purpose of the raids, is to gain enough stuff or gain enough captives to carry the wealth or take from what they pillage to carry the stuff away. But notice what happens is they're spread out, they're eating and drinking and dancing because of the great spoil. Do they believe they are going to get caught? No. Are there sentries posted? Which is easier to defend, a spread out camp or a formed circle? Formed circle, unless you're basic trainees, because me and the brigade commander would walk through those perimeters and never once get challenged. It was okay when I did it. It was usually not okay when he did it. Yeah. No, I didn't have to do that. I just went, that's the colonel walking by. You may want to say something to your platoon sergeant. But hey, it's not my butt chewing. Rock on with your bad self. I was there to assist in loving kindness.
You love the Colonel kindness.
I did. He was actually one of the best 06s I've ever worked for in my entire life. One day we were sitting there. I'll chase this rabbit. I was talking to the company commander. I go, anyhow, brother, I need to let you go because over there is Colonel McLam, and he just walked through your perimeter. So he goes, I'll see you later, chap. I said, I'll be back by in a little bit. I'll bring some food with you. Yeah, sure enough, it was anyhow. These guys are spread out. They don't intend to be caught.
They did have sentries out there, probably wiped out.
They're probably toasted or 3 sheets to the wind. Or both. Why? From where they took from the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Notice that. Who is fighting right now? Judah and who? Philistines. All the able-bodied men are where? On a battlefield. Nobody's going to notice this for weeks. Except for David, who gets sent home. Their plan was we would raid, we would never get caught, and we were going to get a whole host of captives, all of them in good shape because we didn't kill them, and we'll be able to sell them probably to the Egyptians and make a killing because everybody's gone. And then here comes David and his 600 men, and they stumble upon them. They, by chance, just happen to find a kid who's sick and near death. They feed him figs. Pow! He miraculously recovers just out of chance because those were like super figs with high doses of antioxidants that boost his red blood cells. It's in the Hebrew. Look at how all this is coming together from behind the scenes. If you were to look at this just, by chance, and by chance, when they find the camp, they find them spread out and drunk. If you want to get into a street fight with somebody, you want them all spread out and tipsy. Why? Because it's easier to fight one at a time than it is to fight 6 at a time. Trust me. Eating and drinking. Verse 17. And David struck them down. Check this out. From twilight until the evening of the next day. He attacks at night when the advantage is to sober men, not drunk men. He attacks at night because the advantage is to his men. Why? Because he can take his 400 men who have the advantage in knowing the camp and knowing where they are and attacking them and just slaughtering them wholesale versus men spread out all over the place who are not necessarily in their right mind. I used to work inner city youth in Dallas, and this was the warrant squad in Dallas had this thing down to a science. You know that the warrant squad typically served their warrants on Sunday morning between the hours of 7:30 and 9 a.m. Because typically people got off work on Friday and they begin consuming alcohol. And they usually stop somewhere around in the morning on Sunday around 2 or 3 a.m. when the bars close. They would throw a flashbang into the house. I don't know if any of you have ever been tipsy before, but if you've woke up with a headache from being tipsy and someone throws a flashbang into your house, it's probably not a party. One day I watched them do it. The dude was so incapacitated, and man, he's puking all over himself, that they had no problem arresting him. There was no fight involved. They were able to get their man, put him in a car, and they could just roll people up block after block after block after block after block. This is a very effective tool. Why? Because they're drunk, first of all. And to make sure that they're incapacitated even more, you throw a flashbang in there, and then whatever headache they had just it went up exponentially. David waits till they're probably blitzed, attacks at twilight, kills them all night and all day. So the answer to your question, Mary, if he's killing guys all night and all day, it's a big bunch of dudes. It's a lot of them. Notice, though, he doesn't kill them all.
There's another man of them
Escaped, except the 400 men who mounted camels and fled. So there were at least 400 camels. That's a lot of camels.
They were sober enough to ride the camel rather than light it up.
That's right. Ba-dum, ba-dum, oh. Arr. So they at least had 400 camels, or they buddied up, and they at least had 200 camels. They had a lot of camels. They had a lot of beasts of burden. This was a rather large raiding party. Those dudes get away. Everybody else dies. Look at how this works in the background. You're going to see how David moves from being an exile over the next 3 chapters, from being an exile to a man who gets his wife and kids back. He's almost like a country music song played backwards. He gets his wife and kids back. He's going to get the throne back. He's pow, pow, pow. And all of this is occurring without him lifting a single finger. Well, not this part. Here he's killing people wholesale. But up until this point, and then following after this point, he doesn't do anything. He's sitting and he's waiting on God to do these things for him. Why? What has David said constantly about attacking Saul? Who's going to do it rather than David? God's going to do it. It's not my job to attack the Lord's anointed. David recovers all the Amalekites have taken. David rescues his 2 wives. Check this out. Nothing was missing. Whether great or small, sons or daughters, spoil, or anything that has been taken, David brought it all back. David also captured flocks and herds, and the people drove the livestock before him. So all the things that were taken from Ziklag, all the things that were taken through none of it was lost. David got it all. So the 400 men that left basically with the clothes on their back and the camel underneath them, and possibly a weapon. David gets it all back. Now, that's an amazing feat in and of itself, is it not?
Yes.
That doesn't happen in most battles.
Well, one thing he did is he got extra more loot because didn't they attack other places too?
They did, so he gets that too. So then check this out. And they said, this is David's spoil. Then David came to the 200 men that had become too exhausted. Now, it's not like these guys had gone out there and they said, you know what, we really regret this decision. I think we're going to camp here by this brook. and not continue on. These men were exhausted. They could not go on any further. So David returns and he runs into the 200 men, and check this out. Too exhausted to follow David, who'd been left by the brook, and they went out to meet David and the people who were with them. And when David came near, the people greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless fellows amongst the men who had gone with David said, because they did not go with us, we shall not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered. Some of that stuff was their stuff, was it not? They could keep their wives and their kids, but they can't get anything else. Because you didn't go with us, you don't deserve any of it. Kind of like pirates, they have adopted a very mercenary mindset, right? Because you weren't there during the hardship, you don't get the benefit of all that this have. Band of Brothers, have you ever seen the video Band of Brothers? You have the replacement, the episode called The Replacements. You have replacements come in, and they are part of the regiment. And the regiment gets an award, and it's for the entire regiment. One of the guys really gets upset because the replacements are wearing their award, and he goes, you weren't there with us. You don't deserve to wear it. So it's very much a mindset, especially within the Army. You saw this both in Vietnam and in Iraq where I was at. You weren't here. The new guy in had a very unique name, right? The newbie. The other one would work too. He was the new. And did anybody hang out with the newbie? Only if you wanted to have a short life expectancy. Why? Because you weren't with us when we were here, and instead of working that person in, they've left that person an outcast. And he had a shorter life expectancy. Here, the mindset's the same. You weren't here with us as we went through this event. Apply that in our lives today. You weren't here with us as I went through this, and so therefore you don't deserve anything extra. I was sick and you didn't take care of me. Well, I was sick and couldn't take care of you. Doesn't matter. Now that things are going well for me, you don't deserve anything. You see this with church populations. We are the older group, and so therefore we've been here longer, and then the younger group looks and says, well, we want to be part of the group too. Well, you've got to put your time in. We don't do that here, because if you look, we got good folks that are moving into, as we get people to come on, we put them into committees, and we put them into places where they're working, and if you're new, we're going to put you to work.
So it's always.
Say again? That's right. It's a common human reaction. You didn't go with us, you don't deserve it. Kimmy and Caroline have fights over stuff like this all day long. Well, if I give you this, then you can't have that. What does the text call that behavior? Wicked and worthless. The wicked and worthless men said these things to them. You didn't go with us. You may lead away your wife and your children. But David said, you shall not do so, my brothers. With what the Lord has given us, who does he account or ascribe to the victory? David is evenly matched, 400 to the 400 men that got on the camels and rode away. He's evenly matched. The indication, because of the length of which the battle lasted, is that David was grossly outnumbered. Who wins this battle? David's 400 men or the Lord? The Lord wins this battle all day long. The 400 men are not Arnold Schwarzenegger. The 400 men aren't the Expendables, which is it's the new movie series where all the aged superhero dudes from the 80s are now older superhero dudes.
David's men have been on the road.
David's men have been on the road. 200 men drop out for exhaustion. You got to see that the other 400 men are pretty close to breaking as well. And yet in all this, the Lord provides. Now look at that. He provides them a spy. He provides them the camp. He provides them a spread out camp. He provides them an enemy that it's toasted. And then in the winning of the battle, nothing is lost. There's no collateral damage. No family loss. And all your spoil you get back, plus all the stuff they took from the other places. And then people begin to say, we fought this battle. We fought this battle. You were there and you were fighting, but the Lord was killing everybody. It'd be like Joshua going, or not Joshua, it'd be like Gideon going out and saying, I crushed my enemy with 2 clay pots and a torch. You had 2 clay pots and a torch. And you were at the battle site. And yeah, you got bloody. It was the Lord that crushed your enemy. David aptly understands who it is, because what did David do just a few verses earlier? He asked the Lord, shall I pursue? He asked the Lord, will I overtake them? He asked the Lord, will I be... And the Lord said, yes. Go pursue. What does it say here? Let me look back here. David inquired of the Lord, pursue them, and you shall overtake them, and you shall surely rescue. This was predicted back in verse 8. You shall not do so with what the Lord has given us. He has preserved us. He has given into your hand the band that came against us. Well, I thought we did that. Yeah, it's usually the problem. What happens is they got an inverted sense of self. We delivered ourselves. We killed the men. We captured the money. No. I delivered you. I provided you the victory. I allowed you. You see how the difference is in the inversion? A lot of times we tip that scale where we are the main actors in the event. And when you look back, especially to the Old Testament, the we had better shut up. Because it's the Lord. He did it. They just went out and fought. Let's take a look at this. Let's keep looking. Who would listen to you in this matter? For as his share is what goes down into battle, so shall all his share be who stays by the baggage? They are all alike. If the guy goes out in the battle or a guy stays with the baggage train to protect the baggage train, are both jobs vital? Are both jobs necessary? The guy that fights, while he's at the tip of the spear, is relying upon the guy at the baggage train to ensure that his stuff that he's going to need to refit isn't stolen by the enemy. You get this between infantry bubbas and support personnel all the time. Well, you don't know what it's like. Yeah, brother, you don't know what it's like to get up in the middle of the morning and run fuel to you because you can't count. We got a call from one of our sister battalions. It was MLRS. They said, yeah, we need an emergency push of fuel. Well, we brought you supplies yesterday. Why didn't you tell us you were low on fuel? Well, the tank is empty. Did you not do the math requirements we asked you to do to tell us when you were out of fuel? No. We were busy. Doing what? We had to go on patrol. Do you not think that the fuel requirements are an essential aspect of being able to go on patrol? Why, yes, I think it is. Well, you guys aren't doing anything. Why don't you get up and run us some fuel? You're not the only base in the area that we run fuel to. We run fuel to 6 outposts, which is an all-day affair. So now we got to spin up another crew to run fuel to you because you guys can't count. Or follow instructions. Same one ran out of food 3 weeks later. We didn't know the freezer was empty. I guess you'll be eating MREs to your next push of chow. You know, after that event, they didn't run out of food again. If you've eaten an MRE at any one point, eating one for 2 weeks will definitely train you not to run out of chow. I feel bad for them. No, I don't. The guy who stays in the rear and protects the stuff at home is no less valuable than the guy at the front. While your proximity to danger may be closer, both provide a vital role. Both provide a vital service, and as such, deserves an equal portion of the share. Why? Because you don't want to tell the other guy that he's not going to get anything by protecting the baggage train, because when the enemy attacks the baggage train, is there any reason for him to protect it? Nope. Just I'll get my stuff and go away, you can have all this stuff.
So you're not protected against West pay rates?
You know, the chaplain corps was the only officer branch when the Army was giving $25,000 to retain captains that did not get the $25,000. Yeah, I was so mad at that because, well, they were getting chaplains left and right, but they couldn't get everybody else to stay. I thought it was unfair. And then they told me, well, we can get tons of chaplains. Okay. I felt bad. So I stole office supplies. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I didn't steal office supplies. Oh, no. I didn't go after ink pens. I went after staplers and sticky notes. you know, sticky notes is where the money's at. I'm kidding. They all share alike. And David, notice this was not the statue, and David made it the statue and the rule for Israel from that day forward to this day. This was a common belief. You are not at the front of the battle, you don't deserve as much. They said, we'll stop. That is not how you have an army that goes to war. That is not how you lead people into battle. And he made this the rule from that day forward. Now look at all this, what it takes to have happen. 29. David came to Ziklag, and he set apart the spoil to his friends and to the elders of Judah, saying, here is a present to the elders of Judah. Now why is this important? David doesn't really know this yet, but David in a few days is going to become what? King. Saul is going to die in the battle that is raging while David is out killing the Amalekites. And so David sends this present to the elders of Judah and says, here's a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. He didn't go, here's a present to you from David, the magnanimous, benevolent leader that I hope to be in Israel. Follow after me and vote for David, and I'll make Israel great again. Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was there. It was a low-hanging curve. I crushed it. Here's a present from whom? The Lord. David constantly sees the hand of God working, and David constantly gives credit to where it's due. David did not win that war, and he knows he didn't win that war. It was the Lord winning that war. David did not find this guy on the side of the road and say, hey, brother, where you at? Here's some money. He didn't do that. By chance, he ran across this dude in the desert, in the open. By chance, these dudes were partying. By chance, he killed them all. By chance, he had put out this plan. No, by God lining it all out. David returns to Ziklag not because David wants to go home, but because the Philistine kings say, we're not going to war with these 600 Jews in our backfield. Go home. David goes away angry. David comes back a wealthy man and able to send a gift in the name of the Lord to the people who are going to be supporting him here in the next few days and his kingship. Here's a present for you from the Lord. It was from those in Bethel and Ramoth of the Negeb, of Jurit and Eror and Siphon, and man, with a headache, these things are even harder to say, and Ishmoah and Rakal in the cities of those folks, and in the city of the Kenites, and in Hormah, and in Borashan, and in Etchet, and in Hebron, and all these places where David and his men roamed. Send this back. He sends a lot of it back to Jerusalem. They keep a good amount of wealth. When David leaves Ziklag, well, actually Ziklag stays as part of the kingdom of Jerusalem or of Judah in perpetuity because that was given to him by Achish. All the things that happen to us in life, we look at the ups and the downs of things that happen to us in life, and we could do what the men did earlier in this chapter and go, oh, this is the worst day ever. My wife and kids have been hauled off. My mother-in-law is still in the area. I think that would be hell on earth. Huh? They didn't want her either. They like, go home. I'm kidding. She's not here. She doesn't have the internet either in her house, so I'm good. I'm kidding. I like her very much. And Stephanie's not here either. I'm kidding. No, she's good. We get along just fine. Yes, I know. They see the city, they see the situation, and they're ready to kill David. They have a victory, they win the battle, and then they're unwilling to share. From the very beginning, look at David's response. He sees the same situation, and he seeks the Lord's face. He sees the same situation, he asks the Lord, what shall I do? He sees the same situation, and he takes the army out, and they find this guy who's vital in their victory, and they have a great victory. And then, in the midst of conflict, he recognizes who brings the victory. All along, who has been behind the scenes directing David's path? It's been the Lord. We look at the situations in life that come upon us, and we go, this is the worst. It just can't get any worse. It can't get any worse. And we sit and we look at the situation, and we focus in upon the situation as the men did. We looked at Psalm David. Or we can strengthen ourselves within the Lord and begin to ask the Lord, what do you want me to do from here? And sometimes it's not an immediate response. And those times are annoying. I'll be honest with you. Lord, what do you want me to do? I want you to sit there and be quiet. That's kind of torture, isn't it? If you have small children and you look at your small kid and say, I want you to sit there and be quiet. Just out of a psychological observation, do that. And watch the poor child in absolute torment. Because the child knows he wants to do something, but he's waiting on you to tell him what to do. And so you see the child. And after a while, they can't take it, so they're all running all over the place. We do the same thing. Sometimes the response is immediate. Sometimes the response is sit and wait. And sometimes the response is, I did this for a reason, and you're not getting it back. You have two responses to this. You have two ways of looking at this. You're going to behave as the worthless men that David had, or you can behave as David did. You have this juxtaposition throughout the book of 1 Samuel. You have Saul, who was a worthless man, who at every time he tried to kill David, couldn't kill David, standing in front of him with a spear. Think about the Lord moving that spear. I don't think it's because Saul couldn't hit him with the spear. I think it's because the Lord kept Saul from hitting David with the spear, actively. And you have David, who who follows after the face of God and looks after the face of God for how he's going to do things. And then when he's victorious, guess where David gives credit to? To God, not to himself. We see this between these two guys. Questions? Questions? It's a shame, but here's the great thing about that. If you go and you look at the Hall of Heroes in Hebrews chapter 11, with the exception of Enoch, and with my headache, I can't remember with the exception, I think Enoch's the only one in there. All the others are kind of scoundrels. Abraham lies to the Pharaoh. She's my sister. He's from Arkansas. She's my sister. David is an adulterer. Actually, he's an adulterer and he's a murderer. multiple times over because he was killing people in the Negeb to keep it and find out that he was attacking people that were hostile to Israel. But more importantly, that he kills Uriah the Hittite. Joseph. Go read the story of Jacob and Esau. Go read the story of Jacob and Esau. Go read Isaac. Go look through those men in the Hall of Faith. They're listed as great men of the faith, but one of the great things about those individuals is that they behave at times just like us. We lift them up and like, oh, these men are absolutely unsearchable and all. And no. Go read their life's history. They are men of great faith in God, and then they just screw it up royally. And then they're men of great faith in God, and some of them didn't learn the first time, and they screw it up royally. Samson is listed. Jephthah is listed. Gideon is listed. Go read those men's stories. It shows a uniquely a strain for us to do godly things and then turn around and do absolutely ungodly things. And yet, what does God key upon? The totality of their wretchedness or their significance of their walk with God? It does start with Adam and Eve. And then it taints all of us. See again? It goes downhill from there.
So there's hope.
There is. I mean, now that doesn't mean that there's license to sin. And a lot of people think, well, I can do whatever I want. No, that's not what Hebrews is telling us. That's not what David is telling us. But David, at this point, David is rocking it spiritually. And we'll see David, he'll screw up several times between the time before he dies. But it's not unlike us. Any other questions? It's a turn, not answer. And spilled Diet Coke all over my shirt. Nope. Okay. Well, let's close out with a word of prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the example of David. In trying times, when people looked at situations, David looked to you. In times when people looked to themselves for their own advice, he looked to you. When it came time for victory, instead of people patting themselves on the back, he gave glory and honor to you. It is you that directs the hearts and the affairs and the actions of men. It is you that is always there. We have the obligation to ensure that we are in the midst of your plan, not try to force you into our plan. We thank you for David's example. We thank you for Saul's example. We thank you for these worthless men's example. In all these, we see how to live as godly people and how not to live. And on a great day, we all crush it out of the park. And then on other not so great days, we fall short. But thankfully, we have a Savior that allows us to ask, repent, and move forward and start the next day knocking it out of the park. We thank you for the grace that covers a multitude of sins and for the strength that you give us as we walk with you on a daily basis. We ask for these things, all these things in your name we pray. Amen. All right.